This is 1000 grit, and this is what I'd start with if I needed to pretty much completely rebuild the bevel of a hone, or my mistake, bevel of a razor. And my I hone go pushing strokes, push out, and then bring it in. Some people hone side to side. I might do that sometimes, but usually this is the way I go, the way I hold the razor. Not sure, I never had to explain this before. I just kind of grabbed it and whatever felt comfortable. I will grab it, I'll usually put my thumb on the back of the shank of the razor right there. Index finger goes on what I believe is called the stabilizer piece, and middle finger just kind of in front. I'll hold the razor at the toe as well for a push stroke, sorry. Index finger, pretty much like just same as my right hand but on opposite side. Thumb again just on the back of the spine. For the stroke that comes in, I usually have my thumb just on the stabilizer piece there, my index finger on the back, index finger on the left side, same on the back, and thumb on the face of the blade right there. And I'm just going to re-wet my stone a little bit. It's getting dry. Try not to splash everywhere here. Make sure there's water all around and that there's no like little bits of sand or dirt that could mess things up there. If there was, I'd feel it with my finger and get rid of it. And start honing. Going to be using the X pattern here, obviously, since the hone is thinner or less wide than the blade. Just push in, come around, pull back. And no doubt, if you've read anything about honing before, it's recommended you turn the razor on the spine as such when you come around for a stroke. I just don't always do that. I might hone like this. I find it goes a little faster. But when I do, I've done this a lot, so I'm quite familiar with it, and I can do it safely. But when you do that, you want to come, and I always raise the edge before the spine so that I'm not putting unnecessary pressure on the edge. And I'll bring it a good distance up, so when I turn it, I don't like brush it against the hone and completely ruin it. So I'm just going to start with some X pattern and get that going. And if I have a lot of work to do on a razor, I might not go one push out and then one pull in. I might just kind of keep going for half a dozen or so strokes, pushing out and equal amount of strokes pulling in, roughly equal. And if you hear me dragging it back, I just kind of drag it on the spine sometimes. I don't know, a little bit of a bad habit. And I'm going to wipe off the blade so I can check the bevel in the light. And when you check it, what you want to see is a good clean reflection, like identical reflection of light all along. I'll try and get you a little view there, all along the bevel, and it should be identical everywhere, every part of the blade all along. And I have a tiny bit up near the toe that isn't the same, so I'm going to need, it's on both sides, so I'm going to need to put a little extra pressure on the toe for a few strokes. And what I'm going to do is I'll hold it roughly the same, but I'm just going to ever so slightly lift the blade, not necessarily off the hone, but just so it shifts the pressure to the toe. And give it a few strokes. Move over to the other side. Check it again, and yeah, I'm getting much more coverage there. So that's good, that works. If you find the blade doesn't sit flat everywhere, what I do is just kind of rock it. Don't actually rock it. You probably don't even need to like make pressure, just like think you're rocking it and it should give you enough pressure. So I'll shift pressure from one side of the blade to the other as I move the stroke along. I'm going to re-wet this down. feel like some cat hair is getting on here, so I need to rub those off. There we go. And if you find one other thing I will do is for pressure all the way along the blade and good coverage of the bevel, when I'm honing, I'll put my finger on the face of the blade and move it across the blade. And on the pull stroke, I'll do a similar thing with my thumb. You can get some water on there so it slides nicely. Across. It's kind of like, I don't know, folding a moving piece of paper. And for this, my right hand is just guiding the blade. There's no pressure being given onto the blade by my right hand. All the pressure is by my thumb, and index finger, which is still very little pressure. That gives me a bit more coverage of the blade to make sure all parts get covered. And one other thing I will do is once I get a good amount of strokes that way, from heel to toe, I'll give it just one stroke, one light stroke from toe to heel. And what that does, after I wipe off the blade, I can check it in the light, and the striations, the grit or little lines it leaves from the stroke from toe to heel will leave slightly different ones than the one from heel to toe. So you can see from that one stroke with light pressure how much coverage you're getting from that one stroke by noticing just those striations. It's rather difficult to notice, especially at the same grit. It's much more noticeable when, say, I move up to the next grit. But it looks clean and even. And this is the part where like a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe comes in nicely. Yeah, good and even. And to test the blade for sharpness at any stage, can't really explain this since it's mostly a matter of feel, but I'll give it just a little pluck with my index finger. You could use your thumb. The thumb test is drawing it across a blade and it should grip. I'll use my index finger, and it is gripping quite nicely. Like you can feel it, it's just kind of like grabbing the skin a tiny bit as you move it. One other thing that is vehemently recommended that you do not do, that I do sometimes, is draw your finger along the blade. Now I don't like just put my finger on and draw it on. I'll just give it a very, very slight motion toward me when I pluck the blade. And since the epidural layer of skin is dead, you don't feel it. You shouldn't cut any deeper than that, and it will grab the skin like as soon as you start to move it along it, and it's doing that. So it's good. It's getting there. And at 1000 grip, it should do it nicely. But I find the feel for when I move up in grits is that it's smoother, a smoother cut. So it's not as coarse. Oh man, it takes, if you have calluses or something or thick skin, you could probably not feel it, but I don't know, I've done this for so long, I have a bit of a decent feel for it. So that's it explained. Good luck trying to get it. Probably going to take some time, but I'm sure you can. And to finish off, I'm going to wipe my finger off here, I will go same X pattern, ultra light strokes, like virtually no pressure. I'm just guiding the blade. Might give it a bit of a rocking motion from heel to toe. That's obviously exaggerated. Just make sure I get every little bit in there. That's good. One other thing I kind of notice when I'm honing is that you get water collecting on the top of the blade. Now this is kind of a good thing, because when you put the blade down on the hone near some other little puddles, the water on the blade will kind of suck off and dry off into the puddles on the hone. And if you have a spot on your blade, or if your blade isn't perfectly flat and the edge isn't making it to the bevel, it won't really do this, because it'll be kind of lifted and the water won't be able to suck it up. It's just one thing I kind of noticed. I don't really use it as an indicator, it just happens. I'm not sure how much of an indicator it is, seeing as it'll do that sometimes when the blade isn't always there. And by there I mean at its readiness for that grit. Or flat. There we go. Ultra light strokes to finish it off. And wipe it off. And that's it.